and welcome to the webcast today, New Mobile Push Notifications from Amazon Simple Notification Services. Our presenter today is Jon Turow, Senior Product Manager at Amazon Web Services. At the same time, we're pleased to have Praveen Musakuma, Business Development Manager, with us to answer audience questions. Jon, you have the floor.
Thanks, and good morning. In addition to being a Senior Product Manager for our messaging products, I manage the Simple Notification Service that we're going to speak about today. And by the time we're done, you're going to learn why cross-platform mobile push notifications were painful in the past, and how SNS Mobile Push makes them easy, scalable, and cost-effective. So to get started, let's review what push notifications are and how they work. Customers tell us they use mobile push notifications to extend the experience of their app when the app keeps running in the cloud, even when their customers may close it on their specific devices. They use them to drive engagement. And so you may have seen these for a game that you may be playing, or a flight update for a flight that you may have checked into. And some points to note: users opt in to receive mobile push notifications. They're short. They're designed to catch the attention or provide a stream of information. And they're delivered to a specific app on a specific device. Now, from a developer's perspective, when you send a mobile push notification, you address that message to the particular app on the particular device that you'd like to send. And that message is truly pushed in the sense that the user doesn't have to check for it and the device doesn't have to pull for it, but rather it arrives quite quickly to the specific device and can pop up on the user's lock screen. In order to accomplish this trick of truly pushing the messages to the user's connected device, each major mobile platform maintains a push notification service that maintains persistent connections with the devices that it owns. And so as a developer, when you address a message to a particular device, rather than sending it directly to the device, and rather than maintaining that particular connection to the particular device, you instead send your notification to the platform service, and the platform service relays it to the device. And this makes your life easier because you don't have to do the work of maintaining tens of millions of simultaneous connections, and you don't need to hold on to messages in order to deliver them when the device may be off, for example, if your user is on a plane. But in addition to making your life easier, it involves some extra complexity that developers today have to deal with. For example, the platform services ask you to maintain a list of all the tokens of all the devices that you have been authorized to send mobile push notifications to. And when a device is disabled, or when a user deletes your app, or if the token that represents that app on that device changes, it rotates, you are expected as a developer to proactively update your own database so that you can correctly address the list of devices that are live. And when you start to scale up to a large number of devices, this gets tricky. Developers tell us they try to avoid this step, but actually it's really important because if you don't do it correctly, your messages may be delayed, they may not get where they're going. And so it's important but really painful. Now, we've spoken about this in common terms, but actually each major mobile platform maintains its own mobile push notification service that you have to interact with if you want to send push notifications to apps running on those devices. And each platform has its own API. Each platform has its own style and rules of the road in terms of feedback. And each platform has its own features and functionality that you can take advantage of. But as you start to think across these different platforms, you start to have to think about your Apple customers as a separate cohort from your Kindle Fire customers and a separate cohort from your Google customers. So whereas you'd like to think of them as one large group, you're forced to deal with them quite differently, and you're forced to do 3 times the work. Now, layer onto this that your app will hopefully have more than 3 users on 3 platforms. You'd like to get to tens of millions of users or even higher, hundreds of millions. And our customers have told us that when they run cross-platform apps and send push notifications across those platforms to multiple providers of devices from Apple and Google and Kindle Fire, this work gets even more complex. You've now got to maintain 3 separate connections to 3 separate push notification services, all with their own feedback, their own APIs, and their own functionality. And so what developers very often do today is they write their own intermediary services that sit between the cloud application and the platform-specific push relay services. And the intermediary services have the very simple job, but a very important job, to abstract the differences between those APIs so that one message can be directed easily, for example, to Apple and Google and Kindle Fire. And also to manage the feedback so that that work can be centralized and you can solve that problem only once. And so instead of this picture, the developers get this picture. And this makes their life easier because now they can have the abstraction that they didn't have before, and they can treat all of their customers as one large base. And they don't have to worry about the token management, provided that they've solved it correctly the first time. But solving this problem actually introduces still more problems. Even though the push notification services from Apple and Google and Amazon are free, in the sense that they don't charge developers to use them, now you've built this intermediary service that does involve cost and does involve development and operational complexity. Plus, the scalability of that intermediary takes work. So when you launch with just a few dozen users and quickly scale to hundreds of millions of users, not only do you have to scale the core cloud app, you now have to scale your intermediary application. And so at every step of the way, we've solved a set of problems around push notifications, but we've introduced new operational complexity and new costs. And so our customers have asked us to make this a little bit easier for them, a little bit simpler. And so that's why we've extended the Amazon Simple Notification service with mobile push, which supports mobile push notifications to Apple, Google, and Kindle Fire devices. And SNS is a managed, scalable, cross-platform intermediary service in the cloud that you can just use, and you don't need to worry about how many messages will I send, how quickly will I send them, and what APIs will I use. So let's talk about this in depth. We think of cross-platform notifications in one of two ways. Sometimes you'd like to send one common message to all your users or to any cohort of your users and not worry about what platform they're on. And sometimes you'd like to take advantage of the particular pieces of functionality that may exist. For example, increment the badge count on an iOS device. SNS makes it easy to do cross-platform push notifications in either of these cases. If you'd like to specify a platform-specific payload, you can do that, and you can send the exact API expression that you would ordinarily have sent directly to Apple's push notification service, or Google's or Amazon's. On the other hand, if you'd like to simplify the work that your cloud application has to do, you can simply write the default generic message that you'd like to deliver to your customers, and SNS will transpose that content into the appropriate API payload for each platform. So we give you the ability to choose between the automatic and the manual, if you will. That gives you the balance of simplicity and flexibility. We also give you a balance between very fine addressing and very broad. SNS itself has historically been a topic subscribe model where you create a topic and attach subscribers to it, and when you publish, that message is delivered as identical copies to each subscriber. You can do that today with SNS Mobile Push. You can create subscribers to a topic from any platform, and you can address a single push notification to very many end devices at once. Alternatively, if you like to send unique messages to each recipient, you can direct those messages all the way down to the individual token level, so that you can say, John, you have an update in your game. It's your turn to play. And the content itself can be targeted to me with my name, can be targeted based on the circumstances that are in my account and the information that is personally relevant to me. So we balance this ability to be very fine and very broad in the choices that you have in using SNS Mobile Push. We've also simplified the token feedback and management process so that you don't need to worry about it anymore. SNS consumes the token feedback from Apple and Google and Kindle Fire's push notification platforms, so that if there is an update to the token for a particular device, we either proactively disable that token or swap the token. And you don't need to worry about it. You are left with a single stable endpoint that you can send notifications to without worrying that your future notifications may become delayed or blocked entirely. Some customers tell us that even when we manage the feedback on their behalf, they would like to receive that information for their own upstream logic. And so you can actually access the feedback information that we receive from Apple and Google and Kindle Fire. But you don't have to use it in order to use SNS. Now, as I mentioned, Mobile Push is built into the Simple Notification Service, which has been around since 2010. And that gives us a backbone that is highly scalable and highly efficient and battle-tested. So it means that with SNS Mobile Push, you can seamlessly go from just a few messages or just a few devices up to hundreds of millions. And there's no provisioning, there's no management. You just simply start using it more. And you're able to do that without sacrificing the delivery reliability or the durability. And so you're able to trust that your message will get where it's meant to go. We've worked hard to make it easy to get started with SNS Mobile Push. And for us and for many of our customers, it starts with a console experience that lets you register your app that you've created. And what we've done is we've worked hard to make it so that you can take exactly the credentials and exactly the files that you receive from Apple or from Google or from Kindle Fire. And you can drop those into our console, and we will extract the information that we need in order to address notifications to your users. And that's one simple workflow you can use for any platform that you might like to target. It's simple to create a new app with SNS. It's also simple to migrate an existing app. You can grab the tokens that may have been previously managed in your own intermediary service that you built, and you can very easily drop those into SNS to begin sending push notifications with our service and stop having to do that extra work yourself. Because our customers tell us they want broad support for many languages, many platforms and SDKs, we've made sure that SNS Mobile Push comes out of the box with all the SDKs and all the platforms and all the IDEs that AWS customers rely on. So it's really easy to get started. And an additional piece of information that our customers have been really excited about is that you can get started sending mobile push notifications with SNS for free. Every customer and everywhere, every region in the world gets to send 1 million mobile push notifications for free every month. And after that, you pay $1 for every million mobile push notifications. So our research shows that, and our customers tell us that, very many apps will never send more than that in a particular month until they achieve scale. And so this is something that's really excited that we're able to offer to our customers. So that's our quick intro to SNS Mobile Push. To sum up what we've spoken about, SNS Mobile Push is a cross-platform mobile push notification service with support for Apple, Google, and Amazon devices. You can get started for free, sending 1 million mobile push notifications every month and $1 per million after that. We offer seamless scalability, durability, and reliable deliveries, and easy token management. We've got some links here that you can refer to access our documentation and our detail page. Follow up by email if you have any questions that you'd like to engage with us about. But now we've left some time for questions. So it looks like we have some questions already, some discussion going in the chat room. And let's have a look and see what's worth speaking about online. So one question is there support for mobile push notifications to HTML5 apps today? And the answer is we don't support that yet. HTML5 apps would have to have a connection to the Apple or Google or Kindle Fire mobile push notification services, and they don't. In some of these cases, you can use those push notifications to send messages to desktops through, for example, the Chrome browser or Mac OS. And you can have a look at that, and where the Apple, Google, and Kindle Fire push services support desktop today, so does SNS. Okay. Thank you very much for the feedback. Let's have a look at the other questions. So we have a question about easy token management. Somebody asks, when you say easy token management, does that mean you'll be able to send us the token details of each user that opens the push notification? So let's talk about how token management works and what it means. The token represents a particular app on a particular device. And it's your security credential that lets you send notifications to that device. And it means that it's information that without SNS you have to track. And if the user deletes the app, you have to remove that token proactively from your database. Else the notifications will become delayed or blocked. SNS does that work for you. And that's what we mean by easy token management. So I have another question. Is it possible to direct publishing based on a certain version of the application running on the device? The answer is yes, that would be possible. If you're able to collect, when you register your app for push notifications the first time a user runs it, you're able to record in your database information that gets associated with the SNS endpoint. So for example, if you wanted to register which version of the app the user was using and update that as the user updated his app, you could create an SNS topic that would have all users that use a particular version of the app, and you could send them notifications. Alternatively, if you had in your database a field that says, here is the name and handle of my user, and here's the version of the app that he's running, you could run a query that gives you a list of addresses to send direct publishes to, and you could easily publish a mobile push notification to all of those users. We have another question about token management. How can users use it? So we actually do have sample code in our documentation, and you can use the Getting Started guide and the docs that are linked on the page you see here. But the good news would be that you actually don't have to use token management at all. It just works. And so we do that proactively on your behalf. In the documentation, you'll see some information about how to access the token feedback if you'd like to use it for some other purpose in addition to swapping and disabling the tokens in order to keep sending push notifications successfully. So we have a question about what is the format of the mobile push notifications that get sent. And it's a two-part question, and I'll answer that first part first. Each platform has a specific format that it requires push notifications to be sent, and that is a JSON blob that includes a message payload and switches of APIs such as, are you going to increment the badge or play a custom sound? And so SNS will actually wrap your message in the appropriate API for each platform, or alternatively, you can specify exactly what is the API argument that you'd like to send to Apple, to Google, to Kindle Fire, if you'd like to tailor the format and tailor the functionality that you use. The second question is, when push notifications are delivered, can the name of the sender be customized and the return response be analyzed on a keyword basis? The answer is yes. You can customize the content of a mobile push notification to the recipient, and so you can say, John, your ticket is ready, by using direct publishing. Okay. So we have a question about the latency. How long will it take to send 100,000 or a million notifications? We don't publish performance numbers today, but I can tell you that SNS overall handles several billion messages of various endpoint types every day. And so we're really pleased with the performance. You should let us know if you have a particular requirement for your use case. You can follow up by email, or alternatively, if you run into a limit that constrains you. We have another question to confirm. We ourselves do not have to manage the device tokens. Is that right? Yes, that's right. We have a question about scheduling. How can I schedule mobile push notifications that I send? The answer is that you would have to code that logic in your application. SNS is a transport today. So when you hand us the message, we will hand it directly over to Apple. And so what you would do is you would code into your app the timing that would pull the list of devices to send a message to and the particular message that you'd like to send. We have a question about, if I want to send a push notification to 1 million devices, do I have to do 1 million API calls? It depends how you use it. The most common way to do this today would be to send 1 million publishes and 1 million deliveries, 1 million publishes and 1 million deliveries to address those 1 million devices. In total, that would cost you $1. If you use SNS topics to group the devices that you'd like to send messages to, your effective price can be lower because you'll pay for only one publish against however many deliveries you do in the topic. And today, our topics allow something like 10,000 subscribers for individual topics. So that would mean you would only have one publish against 10,000 deliveries, and your effective price would be significantly lower than $1 per million. Question is, how can I deal with large dynamic recipient groups? If I want to send messages to large numbers of recipients, can I manage the topics directly, or do I have to do direct publishing? The answer is that you have a choice. You can use SNS topics, and you can dynamically manipulate the subscribers to those topics. But if depending on how fast is the change of the makeup and how custom will be the message for each recipient, you could choose to use either broadcast with SNS topics or direct publishing. We have a question about, does SNS add additional reliability beyond what Google and Apple and Amazon offer? And the answer is no. The reliability and the durability of SNS is about getting the message to Google and Apple and the Kindle Fire Relay service. and those services are quite reliable in practice, but they don't offer SLAs. Here's a question about is there a user interface, a console that can be used to create and send messages, or is this API only? The answer is that SNS offers a management console. It's integrated with the AWS management console. And in addition to setting up new apps with the console, you can also send push notifications, either a default message or platform-specific push notifications. You can also use the console to create and manage topics and apps. So here's a question about where are the push notifications themselves generated. And this is sort of related to our previous question that we just answered. You can either create the message yourself within your own app and send it via API to SNS, which is what we understand many of our customers want to do. You can also create a message from within the SNS management console. So we give you a choice there. Here's a question. With SNS, will I no longer need to store tokens in my database? And the answer is you will want to store the tokens themselves in your database because it will make it easier to address the messages that you'd like to send. However, you no longer need to proactively update the tokens in your database. You can simply keep a list of the users and the SNS endpoints that you'd like to address, and SNS will manage the tokens underneath those user endpoints. So it'll make it easier. Let's see, looking through the questions. Does this come with analytics? What information can I get about successes and failures? So today, SNS Mobile Push is fully integrated with Amazon CloudWatch. You can use it to get information about whether the notifications were delivered successfully to Apple and Google and Kindle Fire. And you can look at that on a per message basis or overall. And you can set alarms about it, and you can set alerts about it. This is the information that the platform providers send back, and we in turn hand that on to you. So what it doesn't include is whether the message itself was opened or whether the user took an action based on that. If you wanted to build that, you would have to write that logic directly into your app. Looking at questions here. Can you send a message based on the user's location? And the answer is that you would need to use a geolocation package within your app that tracks the current location of the user and send notifications based on that. That's not functionality we offer today. However, if you have that information, you can use it to create a target list and send notifications to a particular group of users. There's a question about how many SNS topics can be created per developer account. Today we have a soft limit of, I believe it's 3,000 topics per developer account, which developers tell us is more than they would need for a lot of use cases. But if you need more, you should email us, and we can increase that limit for you. Here's a question about responses to push notifications. After a user receives a push notification, can he or she directly respond? And can that response be directed? And the answer is that push notifications themselves are mostly unidirectional, meaning the user will receive them on her device. She can choose to acknowledge it and open the app. You could then code the ability for her to respond directly, so there can be an email window that opens or some other communications channel that allows you to communicate in real time. But that would be another piece of technology. It wouldn't be related to the push notification. got a couple questions about what plans we have for additional platform support in the future. Some people have mentioned BlackBerry, some people have mentioned Windows. We don't have anything to announce about that right now, but thank you very much for the feedback. We're always trying to figure out what is the right roadmap that our customers would benefit from the most. So we have a question about the security of SNS and the confidentiality of messages sent using the service. The answer would be that while the message is within the AWS platform, it conforms to the security standards that AWS follows. And we've written what we believe are the best practices for locking down access to publishing push notifications and registering new devices. However, Amazon doesn't control the push relay services of Apple and Google, and the Kindle Fire push notification service is not part of SNS. So those are public services that you're using, and so you should consider accordingly what information you're going to send down those channels. Here's a question about live scores. Notification for live scores, for example, breaking headlines or in a sports game, they only make sense if they're delivered in a matter of seconds. Can SNS be used in this scenario? And we see this is a very common scenario for mobile push notifications. Typically when we talk about latency and delivery times, they can be sort of variable within the terms of computer time, but quite fast in human time, so that a human would perceive that the push notifications are delivered in a matter of seconds. We have a question about SMS support within SNS. So to articulate that, text message support within Simple Notification Service. In addition to sending mobile push notifications for Apple and Google and Kindle Fire devices, Simple Notification Service also supports text messages. And just as you're targeting push notifications, you can also target text messages, today within the US. And so if some of your users are on feature phones, that might be a good additional channel for you to reach them. So I have a question about exactly how the free tier is set. The free tier is a combination of two free tiers, actually. You have 1 million free publishes and 1 million free deliveries. And so if you use SNS topics to group deliveries against one publish, you would use up your free deliveries faster than your free publishes. We have a question about code samples. Are there currently clear code samples using SNS with Apple push notifications? And the answer is yes. You can use the link on the slide that you see on the screen here and actually download not just code samples, but a sample app for an iOS device that you can use to start sending push notifications right away. Here's a question about developing for Apple on the same theme. How can SNS Mobile Push handle development versus production push tokens for APNS? The answer is that Apple has separate push services for apps that are in development versus apps that are in the App Store and are in production. And so we actually treat those as separate push relay services. And so what you would do is you would register your beta app as one app within SNS, and you would re-register it within SNS as a production app. And you would associate the production tokens to the production app. I have a question about the message size. If the message size exceeds the limit, do we automatically break up the message? And the answer is that we handle this in one of two ways. Each mobile platform has a different limit to the payload size that it will support. And so if you send a default message, SNS will do its best to deliver that message in the way that is most appropriate for each platform. And what it will do is it'll chop off any piece of the message that is longer than what is allowed for that platform. Alternatively, if you send a platform-specific payload where you tell us exactly what to relay to Apple or Google or Kindle Fire, you'll get an error if the message is too big because the instruction would be invalid. So I have a question about what are the costs of using SMS versus in-app notifications. Mobile push notifications are significantly cheaper than SMS text messages, just as they're, it's based on the fact that you use data, either Wi-Fi or cellular, to deliver push notifications versus SMS, which is typically charged differently. If you have a look at our detail page, aws.amazon.com/SNS, you'll see what are the costs for each of these delivery methods. Here's a question about what are the credentials, and we've seen a few questions like this. What credentials are required to send mobile push notifications? And is this different from the user credentials of a particular device? And the answer is that yes, you can create, you can use your AWS login, your AWS credentials to authorize your cloud app to send mobile push notifications via our API. Or you can use your AWS credentials to log into the console and send notifications that way. So this is restricted so that only you as the developer can send messages to your customers. Your customers would not be able to send push notifications to other customers through SNS. There's a question about how long a notification can be held if the device is offline. The way that works is each platform will hold the messages for a different period of time, and they'll hold a different number of messages depending on which platform you're talking about. So you can use our documentation to find the links to Apple and Google and Kindle Fire specifics. But the answer is those platforms will hold your message for some period of time if the user's device is off or he's out of the country. And if the user is gone for longer than that period of time, they may interpret that the guy has deleted his app or stopped using that device entirely. So we've seen a few questions about opting in to push notifications and how does SNS abstract from that. The answer is that when a user first runs his app, or in some cases downloads the app, he'll be asked to opt in, are you willing to receive push notifications? And only when he clicks yes is the original token generated and then sent up to SNS. So the fact that you have a token means that the user has opted in to receive messages. And if in future that user opts out and no longer wishes to receive messages, the token will become invalid and SNS will disable it in response to feedback. So we'll manage that for you. One best practice that we've seen is to offer a setting within your own app that provides granular control over which type of push notifications a user wants to receive. For example, a new message for me, or a new offer for me, or a new message to one of my friends. I might have different levels of interest in each of those types of content. And so if you provide users with control over the particular kinds of messages that they're going to receive, you're going to make them happier to receive the messages that they do get. see. I have Praveen who's been watching the forums as well. Let's see what questions you guys have called out. Will there be a publish to all feature in the future? Thank you for the feedback. This is something that we're looking at. There are different ways to address your customers. One request has been publish messages to all users of a particular app. Another request has been publish a message to all users across all of my apps. Another request has been allow me to create more flexible topics so that I can define exactly who I want to receive this particular message within this group. And so this is something that we're looking at, and we appreciate the feedback. How does Amazon keep up with updates of the individual platform API? So there are two components to this. One is, are there differences in the way we interact, we as SNS interact with Apple and Google and Kindle Fire? And the second is, are there new features that we would be able to support? And we do both of those things. We do keep up with any changes that would be important for us to do our job of handing over the messages to Apple and Google and Kindle Fire. In addition, if there is a new feature that you'd like to take advantage of, you'll be able to do that natively within SNS by sending a platform-specific payload. We hand over the API command that you give to us, and so you'd be able to easily take advantage of any new features, any new functionality that come out. There's a question about, can you send rich content within SNS? This is not something we support directly today, although you can accomplish it with SNS. What you would do is you would send a push notification to your app, and you would code the app to, when the user acknowledges that notification, pull down additional rich content. And thank you for the feedback. This is something that we're looking at making easier in the future as well. Okay. So the question is, what information does the developer need to manage in his own database in order to use SNS? What customers who have used SNS already have told us is that they maintain a table of their own users mapped to the SNS endpoint that's been registered. That way, I know if I want to send a message to Jon Turow, I now know which device or devices he is registered to, and I can use that to create publish instructions to SNS. There's a question about, in addition to taking advantage of automatic feedback from Apple and Google and Kindle Fire, can the developer himself mark a device as inactive? And the answer is yes. There's an enabled flag within each token that is registered within SNS, and you can manipulate that flag yourself in addition to allowing SNS to do that. Of course, you can also delete the token entirely if that's helpful to you. There's a question about Google's push notification service, GCM, swapping the tokens that are associated to a particular device. What is the implication for a user of SNS? SNS automatically manages that swap for you, so you'll be able to continue to send to the same SNS endpoint, and you won't even need to worry about the swap. However, if you do track that information, the previous device token on Google will work for some period of time. There's a question about, can you send users to a specific page within the app when they open the push message? And the answer is yes, depending on the platform. And you can use the links within our documentation to look at the functionality of Apple and Google and Kindle Fire. And you can look at the right way to accomplish that for each platform. There's a question about throughput limiting. If I want to publish 1 million push notifications, but I want to space out, space out how quickly users will receive them, so no more than a certain number receive the message at once, can I limit the throughput per second that SNS delivers? And the answer is that we don't support that today. The way to accomplish it today would be to break the large publish up into multiple smaller publishes so that you can ease the load on your app if you choose to do it that way. We have a couple of people seconding the feature request for a batch direct publish. And thank you very much for the feedback. That's something that we're looking at as well. I have a question about whether it's possible to configure multiple SNS accounts to push to a single app. For example, if multiple customers have their own databases and AWS accounts sending notifications to a common app. And the answer is yes, that's possible. You can upload the app token credentials to each AWS account, or within SNS you can actually register multiple instances of the same app as well, if that's helpful to you. I have a question about whether it is required to integrate the AWS framework in my iOS app, or I can use SNS with simple HTTP calls. You don't have to use the AWS SDKs within iOS or Android in order to use SNS. It's your choice. You can use the SDKs and libraries that we provide, or you can use HTTP calls to send messages and send content to us directly. That's your choice. I have a question about security policies, about who can send messages to my devices and what policies I can set. And the answer is that SNS Mobile Push offers full support for the token policy product called IAM within AWS. And so you can set IAM credentials that have narrowly scoped permissions to send only certain kinds of push notifications and only issue certain kinds of commands. We have a couple of people asking for confirmations about the free tier that SNS offers. Every account can send up to 1 million mobile push notifications for free every month. And that's at the account level. So if you have multiple apps within that account, those free mobile push notifications would be split across the multiple apps. Got a bunch more questions here. Who takes care of what notifications are visible to multi-platform users? Those using the app on Android phone, Kindle Fire, iPad. What you're able to do is you have a few options here. You can choose to send notifications only to users on a particular platform. Alternatively, you can send different flavors of the same message to users on each platform. Or as a third alternative, you're able to send one common message that is translated to the appropriate format. So depending on how much of a distinction you want to make between users on each platform, you can make very fine distinctions, or no distinction at all. As far as reporting, again, you can have a look at our documentation for more information, but SNS is fully integrated with Amazon CloudWatch that offers really fine reporting of how many notifications you sent, how many publishes, how many deliveries to each platform, and what were the successes and failures, and how many retries, information like that that you might find useful for your app. Scheduling push notifications is a very popular feature request. So thank you very much, everybody, for that. We're definitely taking all this information into account. Okay. So it looks like we've covered most of the common questions that have come up. If you'd like more information, please do have a look at our detail page, our documentation, and the sample applications that we provide in our docs. Customers tell us they're able to use those to get started pretty quickly. In addition, there's an email address there that you can use to reach out to the team directly if you have any questions, and we'd love to hear about what you're building with SNS Mobile Push. So thank you very much for your time, everybody, and have a great morning.